Hi everyone and welcome to your daily horoscope. Today we have a very active but also deeply emotional sky, and perhaps not in the most positive sense, because today Venus is standing still in the sky preparing to go retrograde tomorrow, and whenever a planet is standing still in the sky, regardless if it's preparing to go retrograde or direct, its symbolism is greatly amplified. Now, Venus is in the dual sign of Gemini, a part of the sky where Venus is usually not that comfortable because, after all, we are talking about the twins, one of the most dual signs in the zodiac. So, when the symbolism of Venus in this part of the sky is greatly amplified, well, then that means that everything is going to be rather dual regarding matters of the heart, and for some people, this is a very uncomfortable energy. And because Venus is so powerful right now, and she also forms a square, a celestial conversation of maximum tension with Neptune from the sign of Pisces, which is also a very powerful dual energy, but usually duality from an emotional perspective, where Gemini is duality either in thought, either in matters of the mind, but it can also represent the mind and heart not being very best friends with each other, especially because of this square. So basically, this is an astrological cocktail for maximum confusion, emotionally but also mentally. This isn't the type of confusion where you have absolutely no idea what you want to do, what you love, what you do not love, what you're attracted towards, what repulses you. This is where you have so much information to work with, because after all, the sun, the luminary body, in the sign of Taurus, where it illuminates our sense of self-worth. Of course, Taurus is the home of Venus, so it has much to do with everything that we love and everything that brings us pleasure. So the sun is there, so we are actually quite aware of whatever brings us pleasure, whatever we desire to have in our lives, and as well, everything that makes us that much valuable, that much worthy to have all the things which bring us pleasure. But also, the sun receives a very powerful, harmonious conversation from Pluto retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, a fellow earth sign. So this energy is that of the truth, that of seeing yourself in a very objective manner, where you simply cannot hide from yourself, you cannot deny from yourself everything that you do love. May it have a very logical and rational reason, or may it have to do simply with your unique and distinctive psychological configuration. Whatever you love is what you love, and there's no question about that. Sometimes it's actually the wrong thing to do is to question why you love something. It's not that it won't bring answers, because psychoanalysis and so very many different methodologies exist in the world to find out, the answers to the questions to why do I like this and that, but to which degree do those answers actually help you? And this is exactly why this trine with Pluto is so very significant, because it tells you the truth one way or another. May it come as an inner realization, may it come as an advice or reflection from others, those who surround you. Either way, it will guide you to the truth, but is that enough? This is where Pluto is actually the power of change, the power of transformation. So whatever truth is going to be revealed to you all throughout this week and even next week, you have to work with that. So either you accept and surrender that this is what you love, this is what you like, regardless of why, and you cannot change it because it is who you are, or you can find the power, Pluto is power, personal power, the power to change and eliminate all those things that you actually like or love, but you do not agree with that for various different reasons. Now this is straightforward. This is like a massive inner work in progress. But under a Venus retrograde, this is where our emotions are very, very unclear. And also, Mars entered the sign of Pisces at 0 degrees, a critical degree. This is where the need to have emotional stability, the need to know your emotions and be aligned with your, inner world, your inner truth, your faith, your own psychological distinctiveness. This is where you have to master your inner self, your psyche, your subconscious, everything. You have to master it. You have to have a certain degree of control over it, not in an obsessive way, of course, but you still need to have power over your emotions. Otherwise, especially since we are talking about Pisces here, another mutable sign, another dual sign, which works extremely well with duality, well, chances are the fish, Pisces, can swim in separate different directions, and that can be perfectly okay. Because someone with a very advanced, very evolved, very powerful emotional world can feel so very many different things at the same time. It doesn't have to be singularity, but this is where Mars requires the fish to kind of at least try to swim in the same direction, because otherwise, especially under a sky like this, you cannot function on any level if there isn't at least a certain degree of control. You can have both over your emotions but also your thoughts. And since there's this energy of truth in the sky, the Pluto and Sun trine, and of course there's Jupiter as well. Jupiter is also trining the Sun, and Jupiter is the inner truth. Jupiter is faith. It is optimism. It is our hopes. It is our spirit of generosity. And sometimes that, especially with the Sun, generosity towards the self. And this is why this Venus retrograde, the beginning of the Venus retrograde season, as in today, when Venus is greatly amplified and standing still in the sky, this is where this might be one of the most difficult days of this Venus retrograde. And this can play out in so very many different ways for different people. Some will definitely put their relationships under a microscope, and it doesn't just have to be romantic relationship. Any friendship, alliance, one-on-one connection, even acquaintances, even professional connections, even contractual relationship, everything is susceptible to this very powerful Venus retrograde tendency to analyze, to get to the bottom of things, to have a certain clarity towards how we feel for other people. And we also might need to be aware, perfectly aware, of what their feelings, what their thoughts, what their relation to us is. Now, for other people, this doesn't have to be romantic. This doesn't have to do with feelings which have to do with another person. This can be professional, how you feel towards your job, how you feel towards your career, how you feel towards your colleagues, or basically if the work environment is appropriate, suitable for a person like you. This can have much to do also with your faith, Neptune and Pisces. So how you feel towards the universe, how comfortable you are in your life story, how comfortable you are with your past, and if there's anything that you need to change, anything that when I mean change, I don't mean traveling back into time and changing it. I mean changing the way you feel towards your past. For example, judging yourself, guilt and shame, all of those can be changed. All of those can be turned into healthy expressions of those energies. For example, where shame and guilt ultimately are transmuted into life experience and wisdom. But ultimately, what this square between Venus and Neptune is trying to do on a very long term, it is to guide us, lead us, direct us towards a true, authentic clarity, to embodying our feelings, to embodying whatever we love, to refine that love, to get to know ourselves that much better, to do our very, very best to detach and just see ourselves objectively. And in order for us to develop our personal coping skills, our personal methodology, how to be as objective as possible with ourselves, but also with any relationship that we might have in our lives, well, we need to go through the hardships. We need to go through this extremely confusing Venusian vibes so that we can learn this lesson, so we can develop our coping skills for the very distant future. This is where we're trying to become our most wisest versions emotionally, but especially Venus in the sign of Gemini mentally. This is where we have to learn how to simply banish defeating thought, how to banish the chitter chatter, the basic chaos of the mind, in order to have very free lives mentally, because it is not always external reality, other people, internet, sources of info that overload us with information. Very many times it is just our own minds, just our own uncertain and chaotic thoughts that are working against us. And for the future, especially under such a very powerful and heavy karmic time that all of us are experiencing, well, mental clarity, to master your mental sphere, to have a choice over which thoughts you allow to exist within you and which thoughts need to be sent to the recycle bin, to the mental recycle bin. This is where you need to possess this power, you need to possess this mastery and this mentality of always having a clear mind, because otherwise I am not sure that we can make extremely wise, extremely practical and good choices for ourselves in this future that we're stepping into, because things are going to be very uncertain, and there are going to be moments in the future, especially towards the end of 2020, when not even our minds, not our hearts, not even our heart space, not even our instinct and gut feelings can be an authentic guiding force, because the future is so uncertain, and that leaves us our intuition. Our intuition is going to be our only valid tool and weapon to navigate into the future and to make the most appropriate choices for ourselves. But that intuition needs to have a clear voice where our self-defeating thoughts, our doubts, our mental filth will not get in the way, because when our minds are battling our intuition, that is always the energy of fear, that is always the energy of, rage and depression, basically, because when your intuition is telling you something in a very crystal clear manner, well, do this, do that, make this step, make this leap of faith, trust X, trust your very first thought, for example, well, the mental sphere is not going to allow you to take such a big risk, to go follow something so uncertain for the rational mind as your intuitive sense. Why? Well, because we were educated, regardless of how spiritual we were all our lives, we were still educated not to trust intuition. We were still educated that the ways of the divine are unknown 100%, and the divine will never mix together with our mortal earthly spheres. And that creates so very many self-defeating thoughts, and that is a very unhealthy spiritual but also religious psychological programming, which is meant to take away all our divinity, it's meant to make us feel like just vessels of flesh who are insignificant, who are unloved, who are just animals. And so very many people are suffering infinitely deep wounds because of that horrible programming that society placed inside of us. And this Venus retrograde the square it holds with Neptune, the trine between the Sun and Pluto, this Jupiter trine, but also later on in the week, when Jupiter goes retrograde, also that energy is freeing us from the religious, the toxic spiritual programmings which made us believe, or especially our mental spheres, our minds, the lower mind, Gemini, that the universe is alien to us, that we are slaves to it, that we need to fear it, that we are insignificant. Well, then how can we expect to have self-love, to believe in our divinity, to believe in our intuition? We can't, basically. Yes, we can choose to do so, but not until we find that deep inner monster, that octopus, which has its arms, its tentacles, deeply in every layer of our consciousness to pump the poison into us, the poison of doubt, the poison of ugliness, the poison of shame and guilt. Ultimately, what does this programming have us do? Well, every single time when we dare to think, when we dare to believe that the universe is supportive, loving, and kind and wise, and it loves us more than we love ourselves, well, then every single time when we dare to think this, feel this, believe this, that inner doubt comes in, which is programmed inside of us, telling us, oh, no, 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 you cannot be loved because you're unworthy, you're a sinner, the universe is distant, the universe is mysteriously infinite, and you cannot comprehend it, you cannot be loved by it. Well, you can be loved by it, but there's so many conditions you have to fulfill, and as soon as you're not a saint, you are faulty, just even a tiny bit, well, then bye bye divinity. And this is absolutely one of the layers to this energy. This is how this energy is influencing so very many of our lives, with or without us being actually aware that it is cleansing that psychological conditioning away from our subconscious so that we can be free, Venus in Gemini, to love as we wish. It is ripping away all those elements, inner elements, mental elements especially, which condition our true ability to love and to live in love. And this is why this Venus retrograde in the sign of Gemini is so very important, especially regarding whatever we believe, our faith, our spirituality, our life view, our principles. And to support all of this, the North Node is in the sign of Gemini, and the South Node in the sign of Aquarius. And Aquarius has so much to do with religion, with dogma, with ideology, and the South Node is our past mistakes. So this is when we truly have to get wiser and more tolerant and open-minded. Well, thank you so much for listening. I wish everyone a blessed and safe day, and thank you so much for your support. Until next time, bye for now.